All right, so today we're diving deep into God's unfailing love. And specifically, we're going to be looking at it through a Bible study reflection on the book of Lamentations.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, which is, kind of a weird place to find this idea of God's constant love, right? I mean, Lamentations, it's all about suffering and grief and pain.
Yeah, it's a pretty heavy book.
It is. So
Mm.
so how do we find this idea of God's never-ending love in there?
Well, I think that's actually what makes this reflection so powerful, right? Like you have this book that's all about like sorrow and pain and all this stuff, and yet right in the middle of it, you have this affirmation of God's love. It's this unwavering, like divine love that just keeps going no matter what. It's like it's almost a paradox, but I think that's what makes it so powerful, you know?
Yeah.
It's like this, it speaks to the depth of God's compassion. It's like even in the darkest moments, even when we're feeling our worst, God's love is still there.
Yeah, yeah. No, I totally get that. And it's funny because when you read the verse in Lamentations, like it just hits different.
Yeah, totally.
But what we're talking about is Lamentations 3.22223.
Yeah.
It says, because of the Lord's great love, we are not consumed, for his compassions never fail.
Hmm.
Like just reading those words in the middle of everything else that's going on in that book, it's like, whoa.
Right. It's like this little glimmer of hope
Yeah.
in all this darkness. And I think the phrase his compassions never fail, like that's the key, right? It suggests that God's love isn't just some fleeting feeling. It's not, it's not something that comes and goes. It's an active force. It's something that's constantly working, constantly sustaining us, even when we feel like we're totally lost.
Yeah.
Like it doesn't depend on our circumstances. It doesn't depend on if we're being good or bad. It's
Right.
it's just there. It's just constant.
And the reflection, it talks about this love being new every morning.
Right.
So it's not like we tap into it once and then it's gone. It's constantly being renewed.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Like if you go back to verse 23, it talks about God's mercies being new every morning. And that's not just like poetic language. It speaks to this constant, like ever-present nature of God's love. And like no matter what you're going through, no matter how dark things seem, every single morning you get a fresh start with God's love.
Man, I can imagine how that could be such a source of strength for someone who's going through a really tough time.
Absolutely. Like imagine waking up every day, and you've got this clean slate. And you know that God's love is there, fresh and ready to meet you right where you are. Like that's some powerful stuff, especially when you think about like the utter despair that the author of Lamentations was feeling. Like to still be able to see that glimmer of hope, that's incredible.
Yeah. So how do we connect this idea, right? Like back to our own lives. We all face difficulties. We all go through hard times. What does it look like to actually experience this kind of, unfailing love on a daily basis?
I think it starts with just acknowledging it,
Yeah.
taking the time to really reflect on God's love, to
Oh.
to be grateful for it. Like, and that can look like a lot of different things for different people. It could be through prayer, it could be through spending time in nature, it could even be through doing like small acts of kindness that are inspired by that love.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. The reflection actually ends with a really simple prayer. It just says, Lord, thank you for your love that never fails. Amen.
Hmm.
And it's like sometimes the most profound things are also the simplest.
Yeah, totally. And I think that prayer also reminds us that experiencing God's love isn't always about these like grand gestures or these like, huge life-changing events. It's about cultivating that awareness. It's about that gratitude for God's love in the everyday moments of our lives.
So we've talked about Lamentations, which doesn't seem like the most obvious place to talk about God's unfailing love, but we've seen how even in the midst of all that suffering, God's love is this constant source of hope and renewal.
Absolutely. It's like a light that never goes out.
Yeah.
And so I guess the question for all of us is if God's love really is new every morning, like how can we seek and experience that renewal in our own lives? Like what does that look like for you today?
That's something to think about.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
And we'll see you next time.
See you then. Bye.